You cannot serve two masters. Church history shows that whenever Christians had divided their loyalties, God and country, two allegiances, dual citizenship, whenever Christians have done that, invariably we end up handing Jesus over to the government and allowing government, the power of Caesar, to define the Jesus that we end up believing in. You cannot serve two masters. Now, for the first 3 centuries, it wasn't like this. For the first 3 centuries, Christians were a persecuted minority, and they did it right. They paid their taxes. They obeyed the laws of the land. They prayed for their leaders like the New Testament tells them to. But these early Christians would never pledge their allegiance to Caesar or the state. These early Christians would never call Caesar Lord, even with a little L. And even though they knew they didn't have to mean it, they wouldn't do it because it compromised their singular allegiance to Jesus Christ as Lord. They refused to hate Rome's national enemies out of fidelity to Christ, who tells us to love our enemies. Instead, they would pray for their national enemies, and when the opportunity presented itself, they would serve their national enemies, and that outraged everyone else in the empire. They would never engage in or support in any way the national violence of Rome. They wouldn't celebrate Rome's victories. They wouldn't celebrate their military holidays. They acted like foreigners and exiles in the land because they knew that they were foreigners and exiles in the land. And that meant all the regular citizens looked at them as subversives, as traitors, as unpatriotic, as ungrateful, and as cowardly. And for that reason, for the first 3 centuries of church history, they were ostracized. The early Christians were persecuted, killed in vicious and barbaric ways, which was really wonderful, because as people watched these Christians being put to death, as ambassadors of a different kingdom, they saw the beauty. Those who had hearts to see and eyes to see saw the beauty of a different kind of a kingdom, the beauty of a different kind of a Lord, the beauty of a different kind of allegiance. And some of them said, yes, I want that, even though it will probably cost me my life. I think that that's true. And so the Christian faith spread incredibly for the first 3 centuries, precisely because the Christians were being put to death. That's why Tertullian said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And then, in the 4th century, the worst thing imaginable happened, and that was Christianity became popular. There's an emperor named Constantine who had a vision, allegedly, and the vision combined Christ with military violence, first time that had ever happened. And he thought this vision was from God, and tragically, some early church leaders agreed with him. And so immediately, Christianity was legalized, and the emperor started favoring Christianity and throwing all sorts of goodies their way. And very quickly, it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. And no sooner did that happen than Christians began to act like citizens. They stopped acting like foreigners and exiles. They began to act like normal pagan Roman citizens. The year after Christianity was made the official religion of the Roman Empire, Christians put their first pagan to death, and so it goes, and so it goes. And ever since, there's always been a strand of people who live in a Jesus countercultural way of life. But the institutional religion of Christendom, the church militant and triumphant, that thing, on the whole, that institution handed Jesus over to the state. Christianity was co-opted by government. Christians ended up serving the state violently if necessary and doing so in Jesus' name. And the beauty of the Jesus-looking kingdom was largely lost. In his marvelous book, Subversion of Christianity, Jacques Ellul, one of my favorite authors, he shows how there's always been a strand of kingdom people who lived in the way of Jesus, regardless of what empire they lived in. But on the whole, the religion of Christendom reduced the church, the institutional church, more often than not, reduced the church to being a cheerleader for whatever form of government it happened to find itself in. This isn't a uniquely American phenomenon that's been going on throughout history. He says this, subversion of Christianity. He goes, Christianity, he's referring to the religion of Christianity here, imbibes cultures like a sponge. Dominated by Greco-Roman culture, it became territorial and feudal. It then became bourgeois, urban, and argentiferous, which just means laden with metal, occupied with money, with a capitalistic system such as we found in America here. It is now becoming socialist with the diffusion of socialism. Listen to this. Each generation thinks it has finally discovered the truth the key, the essential nub of Christianity by veneering itself with the dominant influence or modeling itself on it. Christianity, the religion of Christianity, has always been as elastic with cultures as with political regimes. Monarchist under the monarchy, Republican under the republic, socialist under communism, democratic under America. Everything grows. In this regard, listen to this statement. Christianity, the religion of Christianity, is the opposite of what we are shown by the revelation of God in Jesus Christ, the one who said, my kingdom is not of this world, the one who said you cannot serve two masters. Reality is that serving two masters, Christians have often handed Jesus over to the state, and when that happens, the real Jesus gets crucified. What I mean by that is the real Jesus gets abolished, and he's replaced by a pseudo-Jesus, a Jesus who's a cheerleader for whatever form of government you happen to be under, and therefore, of course, agree with. Jesus is reduced to being a cheerleader of feudalism, or a cheerleader of socialism, or a cheerleader of totalitarianism, or a cheerleader of the monarchy, or the cheerleader of the republic, or a cheerleader of communism, or the cheerleader of democracy and capitalism, or a cheerleader of Nazi socialism, because a third of the German churches did just that, supporting Hitler. It's always hard for the fish to recognize the water they swim in. This is, by the way, why church history is such a bloody mess. I mean that literally. It's diabolically bloody. Because when Jesus becomes a cheerleader for a particular nation, or cheerleader for a particular form of government, or cheerleader for a particular political party, then when that government or that nation or that political party goes to war, as they invariably do, well then the Christians who are aligned, who have their allegiance with that nation or that government or that political party, they go to war too. And they fight just as viciously as everybody else, but they do it in Jesus' name, because Jesus is the cheerleader, which makes it the most demonic thing you can imagine. That's why Christianity has been so bloody. The craziest thing is that after the 14th century, and actually to some extent before then, it was often Christians killing other Christians in the name of their nation and doing it in Jesus' name. What's wrong with this picture? Christians slaughtering other Christians. By feeling that since they've got the right nation and the right government and the right party that God likes, well then you're worth killing, despite the fact that you make Jesus Christ your Lord just as I do. What's wrong with this picture? And if you think that's too ludicrous to be true, consider the fact that we here in America celebrate one group of Christians overpowering another group of Christians every 4th of July. And in a lot of churches, that's considered a distinctly Christian holiday. In fact, every 4th of July, we invariably have some people who are checking the church out leave because we don't celebrate the 4th of July as a Christian holiday. In fact, in the newly published American Patriots Bible, which I've reviewed on my blog and reviewed in several other venues, and I'll go ahead and tip my hand that the reviews weren't necessarily positive. It's really quite it's an amazing work, and I don't mean that in a positive way. But in the Patriots Bible, they hold up the 4th of July as the second most sacred holiday on the Christian calendar, second only to Christmas. I mean, I would have thought Easter would have bumped it down to 3, but no,